Welcome to CCN Midday News. I am your host, Catherine Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, April 20th. Trump's team targets Democratic advantage with people of color. They're killing us, Texas resident says of Trump's rollbacks. Trump says people should say thank you very much for the virus response despite the death toll hitting 40,000. Questions mount over Christian groups behind Central Park's COVID-19 hospital. Americans at the World Health Organization told Trump administration about the coronavirus last year. So much for pro-life. Conservatives demand Republican governors be held accountable for the COVID spread. Let's get to the news. For the majority of people of color who believe that Donald Trump is a racist unworthy of re-election, the Republican president can point to Alice Marie Johnson, the 64-year-old African-American great-grandmother who spent 21 years in prison for a nonviolent drug offense before Trump commuted her sentence in 2018. She has then become an unwitting star for his re-election campaign. $10 million spent on a Super Bowl ad which featured footage of Johnson's emotional release from prison as she praised President John Trump. I'm an African-American woman and he signed my papers. How could I turn away and say he's a racist? Johnson said in an interview this past week, I believe in judging people by the things that they have done. As the next phase of the 2020 presidential campaign begins, Trump's team is betting that his actions, more than his words on issues like criminal justice, education, and abortion, will allow him to chip away at the Democrats' overwhelming advantage with African Americans, Latinos, and women. The stakes are high. Efforts in backing tens of millions of dollars in expensive field programs and a digital operation aimed at peeling away even a narrow slice of voters who make up the backbone of the Democratic Party's political base. Trump's strategy is complicated by his leadership on the coronavirus pandemic that has taken a disproportionately disadvantaging toll on minority communities. His diverse record on immigration and race is hard to overlook. As communities of color say that they live on the front lines of the Trump administration public health and environmental rollbacks, the U.S. News comes across an article out of Houston. The Associated Press met with Danielle Nelson, the best monitor of the emissions billowing out of the oil refineries and chemical plants surrounding her home, the heaving chest of her 9-year-old asthmatic son. She said some nights the boy's chest shudders as he fights to breathe in his sleep. Nelson suspects the towering plants and refineries are to blame, rising like lit-up cities at night around her brick apartment building in the Gulf, Texas coast city of Port Arthur. What protections the federal government and plant operators provide her African American community, and her answer is blunt. They're basically killing us, says the 37-year-old, who herself has been diagnosed with respiratory problems since moving to the community after Hurricane Harvey back in 2017. We don't even know what we're breathing, she says. The Texas Gulf Coast is the United States chemical corridor, with 4 of the country's 10 biggest oil and gas refineries and thousands of chemical facilities. Residents of the mostly Black and Latino communities closest to the refineries and chemical plants say that puts them on the front lines of the Trump administration rollback of decades of public health and environmental protections. Under President Donald Trump, federal regulatory changes are slashing requirements on industries to monitor, report, and reduce toxic pollution, heavy metals, and climate-damaging fossil fuel emissions, and to work transparently with the community to prevent plant disasters such as half a dozen minor chemical fires or explosions that could kill workers and disrupt life along the Texas Gulf Coast over the past year alone. And once again, President Donald Trump has said Americans should say thank you very much for his coronavirus response. On the same day that the U.S. death toll hit 40,000, the president was asked about why he delayed responding to the spread of the virus throughout the month of February during a daily press briefing, and he once again got defensive. The one aspect of the Trump administration's response to the president has consistently boasted about was his enactment to the China travel ban at the end of January. But the travel ban was only against certain foreign nationals and still allowed Americans to travel back to the U.S. after the ban was enacted. More than 40,000 Americans came back into the country and potentially spread the virus, the New York Times has reported. Although the president was correct that there were 0 deaths at the time of his travel ban, health experts have warned that the virus was likely already saturated within the U.S. Experts, including Anthony Fauci, have said shutting down the country quicker could have prevented more infections and deaths. When the big white field hospital tents appeared in Central Park in late March, they became a potent symbol of the scale and severity of New York's coronavirus crisis. But just 2 weeks since the opening of the 68-bed facility run by Franklin Graham's organization Samaritan Purse, questions are mounting over why the controversial religious leader's views, by many to be homophobic, Islamophobic, and politically extreme, was chosen to platform this vital role outside of Mount Sinai Hospital on Fifth Avenue, and who sanctioned it. Graham, a close ally of whom Donald Trump praised in recent briefings, has previously described Islam as evil and described gay people as the enemy. Coronavirus, he recently said, was the result of the sins of the world. Samaritan Purse, which has so far treated 130 coronavirus patients and has about 90 staff at the Central Park field office, requires all staff and volunteers to sign a statement of faith. This statement of faith is a document which includes that we believe that marriage is exclusively the union of one genetic male and one genetic female, and that human life is sacred from conception to its natural end. The decision to allow the group to run such a key of the COVID-19 effort in the city has drawn protests from both activists and politicians. Washington Post reported on Sunday that over a dozen Americans working at the World Health Organization provided real-time information about the emerging coronavirus to the White House, seeming to undercut President Trump's accusations that the WHO, otherwise known as the World Health Organization, failed to communicate the extent of the disease's threat. U.S. physicians, researchers, and public health experts, many connected to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, were working at WHO's Geneva headquarters as part of a year-long rotation, the Post reported, and that they provided information about the coronavirus to the White House as it emerged late last year. The CDC officials were consulting with WHO counterparts since the outbreak began, with sensitive information being shared with the U.S. officials, including the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar. Conservative Washington Post columnist Jennifer Rubin demanding that all governors who refuse to act on the coronavirus crisis be held accountable for killing members of their state. Writing Sunday, Rubin specifically name-checked Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican out of Florida, who allowed young people to flood Florida beaches during spring break so that he could ensure his state scored their seasonal profits. What has been discovered using cell phone data is that those young people then return to areas of the country that have since seen huge outbreaks of the coronavirus. It's unknown if those young people could have been carriers of the virus to Florida or from the state. One thing is for certain, however, some people got sick from those parties and some died. The exact number of people who returned from leisure trips to Florida with the coronavirus may never be known. The New York Times reported cases as far away as California and Massachusetts have been linked to the Winter Party Festival, a beachside dance party and fundraiser for LGBTQ community, which is held on March 4th through the 10th. Another California man died after going to Orlando for a conference and then to a packed Disney World. 2 people went to Disney World and later got relatively sick in Florida and Georgia. DeSantis is among many Republican governors who refuse to lock down their states, including Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, Tate Reeves of Mississippi, and Greg Abbott of Texas. Once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoy. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.